Let's talk about the rushers because our listeners love hearing D-line talk.
Yeah.
The interview process is kind of my hook to get into these rushers because Tibbs has been docked for being too confident, being a little bit different. I can tell he's a different kid, which is okay. Yeah. I've been on the roster with many a different bird.
Yeah, someone call you a different kid.
A lot of people call me different. You know what I'm saying? So I really like the kid. And I look at his tape and I say, I can figure it out with him. But what say you about the interview process and how has it changed? And has there been a push to de-emphasize it or change the kind of tone of the interview?
Yeah, there were some outrageous incidents that happened in some of the interviews, but I don't think with Thibodeaux specifically, this is the general, and I try to I've got notes all over the place with conversations I have with GMs and college directors and some area scouts just to try to get true background, not what the media is saying, what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
The general consensus, and it's almost across the board, is he's a me guy. He definitely wants to be broadcasting and he's he's got his eye on the other things, but he knows he has to have football to get all that other stuff.
Right.
And he really truly wants to be a great player. You always hear does he love football or does he love what football brings? Well, the bottom line is if he's determined to be great for whatever that motivation is, that's what I'm most worried about.
Right.
And by just about every single person I've talked to, he's determined to be great for whatever his motivation is. So that's what you care about. There were times where and I don't want Jadeveon Clowney was different. There were plays where I was like, oh, Lord.
Oh, my God.
He just quit.
Yeah.
He didn't even take that. He barely got out of his stance, saving himself for the NFL. Got it. With Thibodeaux, sometimes it's just not the same violence, in the same fight. And some of it, maybe he's saving himself for the NFL.
He needs hand work, Todd. If he works on his hands, the ceiling. The reason I like him is as a polished guy out of college, and you knew you were going to you knew what the high floor guy, you never got that high ceiling out of me in the top 5 guy where you're 120 sacks, but you got a guy you could hang your hat on. I would rather take the guy who hey, coach, if you're so fucking good at teaching football, teach this kid how to use his hands because he's going to be really good if he learns to use his hands. He does not use his hands well. And I'm saying to the standard of a top 5 pick.
Of an elite, yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree. And you know what? I was going to get to the point. I think where people are missing it, and we talk about that so much because it's a media-driven thing.
Yeah.
But I think where people are missing is that I don't think the interviews or who he is as a person is changing the evaluation as much as teams they see the greatness and the potential, but teams don't see that he's tied everything together yet. You know what I mean? And he's not as dominant consistently as you'd like to see from a guy who, remember, he was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And everyone after his freshman year, when he exploded, especially late in the season, was whatever year it's going to be, 2022, 2023, whatever it is, he's going to be the first pick of at least of the non-quarterbacks, maybe the number 1 overall. So I think people go into watching that tape, especially NFL coaches who are coming off of a season and they're so focused in a bubble looking at NFL players, and they see this and oh, this is Thibodeaux?
Yeah.
This is the guy you guys have been hyping since, for the last 3-4 years.
It's like going to see a movie that people have talked too much about.
Yeah, exactly. So the bar is a little bit different. And I think that's where it's become, all right. And again, he could very easily, Chris, be the number 2 pick in this draft.
Yeah.
And it's all right, well, all this hype was just to get people to watch a little bit more or listen to podcasts a little bit more.
Yeah.
But he also could fall to 10 to the New York Jets, which is, again, it's not it's 8 spots in the draft, but that's $8 million in his rookie contract.
But all the rushers are very rangy to me. And I know Aidan's probably your safest bet to go in the top 5 because of some of the smoke and all that stuff. And we've kind of accepted him as a safe guy. And I like Hutchinson. I really do. But
I've heard some people give his comp as you.
So this is fucked up.
It's a white guy.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is we were just having this
everything I can to do black, white,
yeah.
black.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, give me a non-white Aidan Hutchinson comp.
I cannot find one.
Hey, and what they say to me right before we go, they go, well, you give me a non-white Aidan Hutchinson comp, and I was like, Patrick Kearney, oh fuck, because I think
I try, and I do it every single year.
Now I will say this: Aidan Hutchinson, to me, like I know he's tall, but he doesn't have long arms, and that's a bit of a concern to me. Like I like leverage and length, which sounds great, but a lot of people overrate height. I think the Jared Allen thing I disagree with. I honestly, my best comp for him was Patrick Kearney, and I've seen me, and I'm like, dude, like if we took a picture next to each other, it's kind of like Crosby. His style of rush is kind of like mine or whatever in my prime, like where you had a big menu and you were a high motor guy and all that stuff. But I stood next to Max Crosby, dude. I look like a fucking child, dude. It would be the same thing if I stood next to 6'3" and 3/8, dude.
6'3" 3/8.
My co-host is taller than me. So all I'm saying is they get a little lazy with the comps. I like this kid, but they also say that Ajabo could be even better. So how do you see that? And then also with the Ajabo thing, how do you factor into the injury? Because that didn't bother us with Cam Akers, and the game is changing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I will be mildly surprised if he's a first-round pick, but I still think there's a chance a team 28, 29, 30, 31, somewhere in that range. The thing that factors in, and I love the dude and the story and what, how he's gotten here, and the fact that he was just a rotational player before this year and got his chance and exploded on the scene.
Yeah.
He is an exceptionally gifted edge rusher, pass rusher, like the first step quickness, the spin move, the quickness of his hand. He still hasn't learned how to use his hands.
Yeah.
And if you can teach him, and you have to believe that a late jump on football, that like the more he's around the game, the more he's coached, he's going to pick it up and get better and better. He's just not that great versus the run. And so he's got to get stronger in the lower body, and he's got to learn how to play the run a little bit better, set a harder edge, be more consistent. And so the potential is awesome with Ajabo, but already you were worried, and that's why he wasn't in the conversation with Aidan or Thibodeaux or even, Trayvon Walker or Jermaine Johnson for a while, because he's, right now he's just like a situational pass rusher right now. And he was in Michigan. If you go watch the tape, he started the game, but on a lot of early down situations, a lot of short yardage, goal line, he was coming off the field because he's just not great in that area. So you add the fact that when he does get there, like let's say he misses his rookie season, then as a first-year player in 2023, you're still only getting 25 30
snaps a game if you're really trying to,
And so we're trying to bulk him up, get him stronger in his lower body, teach him how to use his hands, get him better versus the run. So now it's really 2024 until I might get the complete player that I was hoping to get when I drafted.
And that's a heavy cost, even a 1 or even a 2 for me, especially when you can look at guys like, okay, Karlaftis, here's a guy that my 5-minute comp on him was like, kind of looks like BG to me, Brandon Graham. The way he's built and the way he turns his hips, and like he's going to have to win in some creative ways. But what do you make of the pro day thing? Because it was funny when it also made me feel old when I saw that he did his pro day outside and people were like, yikes, he ran a 4.71. I'm like, he fucking ran a 4.71 in the sleet.
Yeah, like a 15-mile-an-hour wind.
I'm like, let's draft this kid. Like, if you're worried about the times, what do you make of him, and what do you make of that poor pro day, or and why did his agent? What's up with the agent saying, you might know his agent, but like, hey, wait until it's raining in Indiana in February to do your pro day?
Yeah, who knows what they were thinking. I'm probably going to show the toughness or something. There was some thought there, I'm guessing. But
some Purdue stuff.
Bottom line is, he doesn't look like a 4.5 or a 4.6 guy on tape. So what do you get what you're expecting to get usually? Yeah. Quite honestly, I think he's a late first, early second based on my grade.
Wow.
I like him a lot as a player. I don't think he's going to be a special pass rusher. I think he's a guy who's going to get a lot more pressures than he is get home. I think he knocks on the door a lot, but doesn't bang the door down. Yeah. He's got some tightness at the top of his turn, like the torso flexibility is not quite there. At times I see. And some of the tightness too is the reason why he's not finishing. He's not a great finisher. Again, like you talk about these players, like the amount of pressures that he had was outrageous. Yeah. And how consistent he was on tape and how hard he plays in the fight. And he's going to be a good football player for a long time in the league. I'm convinced of it. I just don't know that he's ever going to be great or a guy that you have to scheme for.
I agree. And it's so hard to, like, if the guy's not, if he's close a lot in college, if you're close a lot in the pros, that's good. But like in college, how do you project close a lot in college to the NFL? That if you're close is not even close in the NFL. The ball speeds up. People
what was the
better.
Difference like for you? I'm always curious. Like when you got to the league, what was
the hardest thing was learning to play on an edge, because I played in Grove's system. I was like a 4-eye. And so like, hey, here's some space. What do you do with it? And it takes, that's why I think like scheme change is not insignificant when you're talking about a pass rusher. And I'm looking at like Trayvon Walker, who like, what are you going to get out of him to justify? I think he's going to be a really good player. I fucking like the kid. Of course, I was born in 1985, which sounds old now, but like in 2008, I feel like he's a top pick. I mean, in 1997, he's a top pick, but in that he's a little bit of a throwback. Like, how does somebody justify saying we might have to move a guy inside, but we're going to, on third down, but we're going to pick him 3? You know what I mean? Like, what's
he's an all-time projection. He's going to be a fascinating case study because I love him and I kind of believe in him. I think he's going to be, at worst, you're getting a great run defender who's going to be disruptive in the passing game, who, by the way, looks pretty fluid when he drops into coverage. So you can do some different, games and do some different things with him. But he is a projection. There are 2 things with him. We talked about Karlaftis, not a great finisher. He left a lot of sacks on the field. Yeah, he did. I mean, you can lie about it. You can cover it up. You can talk around it, but he did. And so he's going to have to improve on that. And I don't know how you do improve on that.
That's tough because I was not a finisher, and I can tell you when for 11 years I tried to learn how to finish, bro. People were eating off me, It's just like, and you're just sitting there and you're like, fuck, dude, what do I need to grab a little bit or like, grab on a little tighter or turn this corner better? But if you're not a good finisher in college, I don't think you're going to be a good finisher in the pros.
Yeah, so that's one part, and it wasn't like egregious, but there were a handful of times where you're like, he should have gotten there.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and this is the projection part, his hand usage has to improve. He's got to get better with his hand. You can say that about a lot of these college guys, but I think he can get better with his hands. How many guys, and this is what you're betting on. First of all, let's go back to this. He's disciplined. He's a great run stopper. He played within a scheme. They were fishing with dynamite at Georgia. And he was the dynamite. Like, you go in and blast these 2 guys, and now we're going to create a crease. And Nakobe Dean and Channing Tindall and Quay Walker, 3 guys are going to be drafted in the first 2-3 rounds of this class. Let them go finish and make the play. So there are a lot of snaps where it's just like a throwaway if you're just evaluating what he is as a pass rusher. But I do think he has, early in his career, he's going to be good when he's reduced inside, and he's going to be able to create some pressure on some pretty obvious passing downs.
Yeah.
Then you got to work with his hands. The finishing may never get there, but by simple use of hands, and remember, 6'5", and it's not just in numbers. He's a great player. I hate doing this because people think, well, Mike Mamula, all that shit. Like, that's not the deal. The deal is he's a really good football player right now, and he's got a chance to be better and more productive as a pass rusher if used differently and if he improves his hands. But you can't coach 6'5", 272, 35.5-inch arms. That's like a great.
You sell me right there, dude. You sell me.
Leverage, right?
You sell me right because I tell you, I know what it feels like. The minute somebody's longer than you, it's just like, fuck, dude, I can't do anything. And that guy's he's long as any tackle.
So I give you 35.5-inch arms and say, all right, now you're running a 4.51.
It's great. He's going to finish a lot. He's going to make a lot of tackles sideline to sideline that are going to justify. He's going to be a 70 tackle a year guy.
And he did that in college, and that's what he's going to be in the pros.
Yep.
And so you're getting a baseline of a really good football player right now and a great run stopper and a guy who's got great range at that position is exactly what you said. And then let's work with him on his hands and get a little bit more production out of him.